Hey, this is Dan from Bible Prophecy and Truth, and this is part 6 of a series on understanding the book of Revelation and the timeline of events. And we're going to be looking at Revelation chapter 6 today, the 7 seals specifically. And I invite you to follow along on my website at BibleProphecyandTruth.com under /prophecy Four Horsemen, or you can go from my menu just to the Four Horsemen from Bible Prophecy, Biblical Prophecy, and then the Four Horsemen. That's the page I'm on right now. Or I have a video on this page, or you can go to rumble.com /Bible Prophecy and see all of my videos there, including the 7 seals, the Four Horsemen of Revelation, which is on that site as well. I recommend people use that because they are not censoring like all the other big tech. So we can actually talk about the truth there and not worry about it getting censored. So the Four Horsemen of Revelation is also known as the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse and many other different types of descriptions. But it's not really an apocalypse. I know a lot of people teach that there's a couple of the horses are like famine and things like that, which doesn't even really make sense. But what does make sense and what makes the most sense is when we combine Revelation 6:1-8 with Zechariah 6:1-8, and then it really all the puzzle pieces fit together. And the first thing I want to mention here, when I talk about prophecy and talk about prophecy that's likely come to pass, the thing is we have to remember that speculation is not equal to knowledge. And I know there's a lot of videos out there, a lot of teachers out there that say this is what it is, and this is absolute positive, and here's the proof in the Bible, and but we cannot know absolutely for sure until all things come to pass. So I'm never going to say that this is absolutely 100% sure thing that this is what it is. This is just what I believe it is after years and years of study and looking at other people's theories, looking at the Bible, comparing scriptures, and looking at what's happened in the past. So here's some of the things that are made, statements that I make that are absolute fact, is that there's going to be 4 horsemen that are given power on the earth, Revelation chapter 6. There's also going to be 4 spirits that are given power on the earth from Zechariah 6. And I'm going to show you in a minute how they marry up with each other. And the horsemen and spirits are depicted as white, black, red, and green spotted horses. And they walk to and fro through the earth and have power to control many things on the earth. So again, I invite you to go to my webpage and watch the video on the 4 horsemen that I have on there, or rumble.com, or I have a link to YouTube as well on this webpage. But because I'm going to go kind of quickly in this video and not really go into as much depth, but I'm going to touch on a few things. Like it's almost a surety that Islam is the 4th horse, the green horse, which in the scriptures the word chloros is used, which is a pale green. And in the King James scriptures it says the pale horse for that horse. And it's but like I said, that word pale in the King James is actually the word chloros, which is, sorry, I got to find it here. I'm showing you so you don't have to just take my word for it. The word chloros means greenish or pale green. And so they chose to use the word pale in this scripture when in fact that same word chloros is used other places in the King James version, the New Testament, and they actually use the word green. So that's one of the things that we have to remember. When they translated things, they kind of decided to use certain words that they thought it meant at that time. And here's where I'm talking about that on my webpage is Mark 6:39, Revelation 8:7, Revelation 9:4. All three of these other places, that same word chloros was used, was green, which is what it actually is in Revelation 6 as well. So it's almost a certainty that this last horse is Islam, and I'm going to show you. I'm going to touch quickly on what they look like they are based on history, based on these scriptures, especially when you combine these two scriptures together. And like I said, definitely watch the other video because it goes into great depth. But the black horse, black in news circles and political circles, it represents capitalism. If you're in the black, that means you're profitable in business. That's the Western world. It's capitalism. And there's, the rider has a pair of balances. There's a set of balances on the U.S. currency. I know it's the Treasury seal, but that's because it's talking about currency and representing global free trade and capitalism. It's represented there. And the black horse and the rider, the spirit from Zechariah, the black horse, goes forth into the north country. And specifically, this area of the world around the Mediterranean Sea and Israel and the Middle East is the theme of Bible prophecy. And so when the black horse goes north, it goes north into Europe. It goes north into North America. And then the white horse goes forth after the black, not necessarily only in the north, but the white horse followed the black horse in that prophecy. And the white horse is almost certainly Catholicism. And it's, like I said, read this article and watch the other video to see why I believe that. There's several reasons. I mean, it talks about a rider had a bow and a crown and it went forth to conquer. Now, the Vatican does not have an army, but whenever the majority of the people of a nation become Catholic, that nation is referred to as a, quote, Catholic nation, and the Vatican believes it has the right to make political decisions and command the leaders of those nations that are Catholic. He wears a crown. The white, white is everything in the Vatican. The limo that the Pope wears, rides in, the helicopter, everything is white. If the Pope were to ride a horse, it would be white, right? And white is peace. White stands for peace, and the Vatican comes in the name of peace, right? That's their theme. And then the interesting thing is that this white horse follows the black, and everywhere that capitalism goes, everywhere that the Western world goes, we also see the Catholicism going right behind it. And this is a map showing the heaviest population of Catholicism in the world and the populations of capitalistic nations. And you see in Europe, in the northern country, also in North America. Now, like I said, it doesn't just go only in those places, but it follows the black, like it said. So then we look at the red horse, and everybody knows that red stands for communism, right? That's been the case for years and years. And this horse has a great sword, and they kill each other. And the communists in China have killed over 80 million since they took over in 1948. And the government of the USSR, which is really, Russia is still very much a communist nation. And the USSR killed 67 million of its own people. So they definitely kill each other. Communism being red fits that very well. And then this green horse, most people don't understand that green is actually the color of Islam. It was Muhammad's favorite color. They have a lot of green in their in everything they do, and I'm sorry you can't see this picture very well. I'll blow it up a little bit for you. They paint the top of their mosques green. Most of their flags, Islamic countries' flags, are green, and they wear green. Green is everywhere in Islam, and and it's just because they aspire to be like Muhammad, much like Christians aspire to be like Christ. And so they love the color green. And then this horse went south, and 96%, 96.5% of the world's Muslims are in the southern hemisphere. If we look at this map, you can see that the darkest green is Islam. And when we look at the area of prophecy, which is the Mediterranean Sea, you can see that it's definitely in the southern hemisphere. And another very interesting thing about this is where it says that the black horse went into the north country, and the black horse in the north quiets the spirit of the green horse in the north. And when we compare these two maps, you can see capitalism. Everywhere capitalism is the lightest colored, where Islam is not present. And everywhere capitalism is not seen is where we see the darkest green, where there's more Muslims and more Islam in that area. It matches so perfectly that it's just incredible when we look at this. And then there's other things. The black horse, or the green horse, sorry, went south, and death and hell follows it, and hunger and the beasts of the earth and things like that. And when we look at where hunger is, it's definitely south, just where the same place this horse went, into the south. That's where the most starving people are in the world, is everywhere that Islam is. You can see this map where you compare these two maps, where Islam is where, and where it's the heaviest is where the heaviest hunger is. And then even up like in Russia, where there's a high percentage, about 15% of people in Russia are Muslim, and there's a lot of hunger there. And then another interesting thing is that the population, it says this horse was given power over a fourth part of the earth. And Islam today, this was back in 2015, where Islam had about 1.8 billion Muslims, which was 24.1% of the world's population. Well, today in 2020, it's almost a certainty that they're very, very close to 25%, like almost exactly a quarter of the earth today. So it fits this horse so perfectly. It's just incredible to see. And then, like I said, I invite you to watch that other video. And then I actually have another page linked from this page. Here on this page, just under these maps, you can see I have a link to Islam in the Bible, which goes into great detail on where Islam came from, how this Allah that the Muslims worship is actually the Baal of the Old Testament, the false god that came into being about the same time that God created Israel, is when Baal worship began. And it was all about the moon worship, and the worshiping the bodies of the heavenly bodies, which is the sun, the moon, the stars. And the moon, being the largest in the sky, was called the great God, which is what Allah is, the great God. And it's the same exact thing. When Muhammad created Islam, he took all of the pagan moon worship and different things and combined it all together to create his monotheistic religion. And I invite you to read that page too, because there's a series of prophecies in Islam, I'll show you here real quick, that match the Bible like a mirror. And it's on that page, Islam in the Bible, on my website. It's under BibleProphecyandTruth.com/notes/Islam. And it's under this great lie here that I have, where Satan actually mirrored the Bible, the prophecies of the Bible, perfectly in Islam, because Satan knows that the prophecies of the Bible are going to come to pass. He knows that. So he created an exactly opposite mirror, where the good guys of Islam are actually the bad guys of the Bible. The Antichrist and the false prophet are the Mahdi and the Muslim Jesus in Muslim prophecy. So Satan set it up so perfectly that it's going to fool all of the Muslims of the world lock, stock, and barrel when the Bible prophecy comes true. They're going to think it's their prophecy, and they're going to be fooled so badly. I really encourage you to watch that video and read that document that I have there, because it's mind blowing when you see that and you see how it matches what's going on in the world so perfectly. It's just incredible. And then if we look at the remaining prophecies, like I said, I'm kind of going through this. I'm not going into great detail on these. Definitely watch that other video. Look at the article on the 7 seals, the 4 horsemen, and see what I have there, because I go into detail on why these match up so perfectly. And then we have the remaining seals. And one of the things I want to talk about real quick is, a lot of people say, well, when you look at Revelation chapter 1 and it says things which must shortly come to pass, and then the time is at hand, and everybody says, well, this it's been 2,000 years. This is not shortly to come to pass, back in around 90 AD when John was given these revelations. But here's the thing: if Catholicism is that white horse, if it's the first seal, Catholicism was created by Constantine in 325 AD. That was only a couple hundred years after this vision. So it really was about to come to pass. It was about to happen. And the time was at hand, because the seals have been being broken for 1,700 years now. The first 4 seals have been opened, and these 4 spirits are in the earth. From Zechariah chapter 6, and it's a coincidence that it's Revelation 6:1 through 8 and Zechariah 6:1 through 8. It's very much a coincidence, because, as I said before, these chapter numbers and verse numbers didn't exist when these were first written. They were just inserted there by men to make it easier for us to find references and things like that. So it's very coincidental, but that's where we see the spirits that are the same thing. The red, white, and the black horses, and then the grizzled and bay that it shows here. Grizzled and bay actually means spotted and of a strong color, is what the grizzled and bay actually means. And when we see that green in Revelation, so what it is it's a strong green colored spotted horse, is all that means. It's not splitting it into 2 horses or anything like that. It's actually just that spirit that's in the world, that is Islam. And when you look at, I mentioned this in that video, that when you look at those spirits, the spirit of Catholicism, the spirit of capitalism, the spirit of communism, and the spirit of Islam, and if you think about those 4 spirits cover most of the world. And you can see how the different societies, the mindset of the people that live under those spirits have different ways of thinking, and it's just incredible when you see all that in your mind and how it fits so perfectly. So the remaining seals are the 5th seal in chapter 6, verse 9. And when he opened the 5th seal, I saw unto the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled. Now this is talking about the souls under the altar is really just a symbolic picture of those that have died in Christ or belong to God, that have died prior to this. And it's almost a certainty that this 5th seal, the timing of it is going to be during the final 7 years, or shortly before it, and during the final 7 years, and during the tribulation, where all of the things that are going to come to pass shortly are going on. And God just says, be patient, rest a little while longer, and then it'll all be done. And so that's what that seal is, and I'm absolutely certain in my mind that we are in that time of the fifth seal now. That's where we are in biblical prophecy. And like I said, watch that other video and check out my website and read that article, because I go into more detail. And then I beheld when he'd opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. The sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of heaven fell into the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, the rich men, the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman and every free man, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, Fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Now you remember I showed you before that we have an exact duplicate of these events in other scriptures, right? Matthew 24 says, immediately after the tribulation, will the sun be darkened, the moon will not give her light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And the seventh trumpet, the seventh vial, Ezekiel 38, we see that the same thing, the great day of God's wrath is come. The mountains and islands being moved, the great voices in the temple from heaven, lightnings, voices and thunderings. And then we also see in the seventh trumpet, the seventh vial in Ezekiel, that's when great hailstones will be falling on the earth. And it actually says about the weight of a talent, which if you extrapolate that, it actually comes out to about, these hailstones are going to be a couple 100 pounds. They're going to be huge. And we know that these things happen immediately after the tribulation, which is at the Battle of Armageddon, which is the same thing as the Battle of Gog and Magog. And I encourage you, like I've said before, to study these scriptures. And then, there's one of the things that I'd like to point out here is the day of God's wrath. It's spoken of many times in Revelation. And if Revelation is a sequential timeline of events, chronological, it doesn't make sense at all, specifically with this, because Revelation 6, 11, 14, 15, 16, and 19 all speak of the wrath of God. And then, like I say, in Revelation 6, 11, 14, and 16, and 19, God's wrath is poured out. But then in chapters 14 and 15, God's wrath is presented as a future event. So how does that work if it's all a sequential chronological record of events? Because the wrath of God we just saw is poured out in Revelation 6 in the sixth seal. So how is that possible if it's a sequential timeline, how is it possible when in chapters 14 and 15 it's presented as a future event? And then it's also talked about in Revelation 19, right? The wrath of God. So it doesn't make sense. I highly encourage you to take the time to really study this stuff and see for yourself. So one last thing before I end this video. In Revelation 6, we only see through the first six seals, and it's actually Revelation 8 that we see the seventh seal. And remember I mentioned that the chapter and verse numbers were inserted by men, and it was back when they did that, that's when they thought this was the best place to put it, right? But it really doesn't make sense. And Revelation 8 being the seventh seal, and then Revelation 8:2, verse 1 is the seventh seal, verse 2 starts the seven trumpets. It leads people to think that the seals lead into the trumpets. But it is absolutely 100% not so. And Revelation 7, remember, we have a lot of places in Revelation where John starts a vision, goes into another vision, talks about different things, and then goes back to the same vision. This is one place that's absolutely 100% good example of, because he goes through the first six seals, in Revelation 6, and then Revelation 7 talks about the sealing of the 144,000, talks about a great multitude from every nation, which we're going to study this in the next video. This is actually the people of God, the saints of God, are shown in heaven with God. And it actually talks about the very end, where they shall hunger no more and neither thirst anymore, nor the sunlight on them, which is also in Revelation 21, where it shows us these events at the very end, the last thing. So this vision here is just like I showed you in chapter 5, where it looks like it's showing us stuff that happens right up to the very end. This is the same thing. This is another vision that John has nestled in here that shows us the very end, the last thing that happens before eternity with God. And like I said, we'll talk about that in the next video when we study chapter 7. But I wanted to point out that the last seal, it doesn't even record it until Revelation 8, after this other video, or after the other vision that John saw here. And that's where it shows us specifically that John writes in this way, that these visions are not sequential. Now, some of them are actually showing things that show the same timeline, or even stuff all the way to the end, during, like, in the middle of another vision, and we'll talk about that more. But the last seal, the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. Now you remember that when we look at that chart, the seal is the sixth seal matches with the seventh trumpet, the seventh vial, and Matthew 24 when Christ returns. So immediately after the wrath of God is finished is when this seal happens. It's after the sixth seal, after all those events and the return of Christ, the rapture, the pouring of the wrath of God, then the sixth seal is open, and there's silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. Everything's done. Remember, it says it is done, because that's the end of this age, the end of of mankind ruling himself, and God comes and takes over, and all that part of the plan is done. I can't wait for that day. So I'll see you in the next video, and we'll study Revelation 7 in that one. God bless you.